Can you tell us more about your experience as a schoolgirl and what it was like, especially to go to university, to Princeton, as one of the very few young Black women there?
Mm-hmm. Well, as many of you know my background, I grew up in Chicago in a working class community. My parents weren't wealthy, so we didn't have the resources to spend on fees at private schools. We went to the neighborhood public school, and I went to public school my entire life. And I was always that student who wanted to get A's. I wanted to do well. I enjoyed learning. I enjoyed excelling. But what I found out is that when you're one of those kids in a community where not everyone has the same goals, I found myself having to walk a bunch of different lines. There were some kids that didn't like kids who were smart and got good grades. There were some kids who criticized the way I talk. They said that I talked like I was white, which was another way of saying that you think you're better than other people. So I had to contend with, how do I get my education when I'm surrounded by people who may have different expectations of me? And those just weren't the kids in the neighborhood. There were teachers I had to confront, teachers who underestimated me every step of the way. Even when I applied to Princeton, I write about in my book, and I tell this story all the time, even though I was at the top of my class and I was a class officer, I was a leader, when I sat down with my high school counselor, somebody who didn't know me but was assigned to work with students to help them apply to college, and I told them my intention was to apply to Princeton, that counselor told me, I don't think you're Princeton material. The person whose job it was to help young people reach their dreams when it came to college saw me, and whatever she saw in me told her that my dreams were too high. And that cut me in a way that even though I continued on, I applied, obviously you know I got in, but I still remember that story. I remember that feeling of doubt, just another adult sort of placing a barrier on me that I didn't even have for myself. So then to enter into an elite school when your high school counselor has told you you're not good enough, when all of society sort of looks at kids of color or kids from poor communities or rural communities as not belonging. I, like many others, walked into that school with a stigma in my own head. More young people nowadays call it imposter syndrome. I don't know if they call it that in Britain, where kids like me feel like they don't belong, so they feel like they're faking it. And I had to get over that. And one of the ways that I got over it was that I looked around at Princeton and I saw kids who were not as talented or as gifted or as hardworking as I was. I learned that this notion of affirmative action sometimes only applies to kids of color or kids from different backgrounds or poor kids, but there are all kinds of affirmative action that take place in elite schools around the country, athletes who are admitted not because they're great students, but because they can add value, legacies, people who come from families with long lines within the school, they get admission. So I started to realize that the doubts that I had in my head were all mine. And I had to work to overcome that question that I always ask myself, am I good enough? And I write about that. That's a question that has dogged me for a good part of my life. Am I good enough to have all of this? Am I good enough to be the First Lady of the United States? And I think that many women, and definitely many young girls of all backgrounds, walk around with that question. But how I overcame that is how I overcome anything: hard work. So whenever I doubted myself, I just told myself, let me put my head down and do the work, and I would let my work speak for itself. And I still find that I do that. I still feel that at some level I have something to prove because of the color of my skin, because of the shape of my body, because of who knows how people are judging me. But it takes some time and it takes some maturity to start having some successes under your belt where you realize, yes, in fact, I am good enough. So I had to get out of my own way, first of all. And and realize that I belong just as much as anyone else. So
I know in 2009 you said it was very important to reach back and help others. And I was just wondering, what other ways can we be helping younger students?
well, this is a good question, because I think young people, when they think about change, you get hung up on thinking that the only change that matters is something big and huge and powerful and mighty, starting your own organization or moving the needle on an initiative. But when you're young, the best thing you can do is, number one, take care of you, because you are the best asset you can invest in at this time. So that means taking care of your space, your health, your education, protecting your heart is an important investment for the bigger picture. And then think about who's around you. Who can you really influence? And everyone can influence someone. Maybe it's a younger sibling, maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's another girl in a class below you. Because when you think about it, younger kids, they don't necessarily look up to the teacher. They look up to the girl right just above them, Younger girls love teenagers. You are fascinating to young girls. Just the way you carry yourselves. You're just a mystery to them. So when you're a teenager, kids who are in lower levels, you have power over how they see themselves in a way that even I don't, because you have access to them on a regular basis. So I would urge you to think about, who do you have access to right now, today, that is looking to you for guidance? They see you as a role model, because I guarantee you there is someone in your life right now who thinks that the sun rises and sets on every word you say. And I would start talking to them. And I would do small things like bring them with me when I did something unique, taking them to a museum. It's those small gestures that matter. It's not the grand sweeping actions that make change. Change happens every single day with the little interactions that you have with the people in your life. And you can also have an impact on the men in your life, because oftentimes there are fathers or grandfathers or brothers who aren't quite sure that investing in a girl's education is worth it, and some mothers think that as well. Well, you're a living example in your communities of the power of an education. And so vocalize that. Vocalize within your communities what this means to you. Articulate your passion to them. Try to change some hearts and minds so that the next little girls coming up in your communities don't run into the same kind of barriers and the resistance that maybe you experienced, because you're coming back as a success. A parent can see from just what these three young ladies are doing that the investment that you all made in your education is coming back in multiple ways. I say this now, what I can do for my family because I have an education, how I can take care of my mother doesn't have to want for anything, because she placed that investment in me at a young age. And some parents who don't have that experience and are afraid of sending their girls out there aren't thinking further down the road. So you can be the example that some of the elders need to see so that they view education differently for their daughters.
We met some of the White House mentees. And I just think with these young women here are just some fantastic examples of what can be achieved, and wonder what advice you would have them to give as if they could become mentors to other people. Rather than just in being an example, how do you become a mentor? What was it you felt that was so important in a mentoring program?
Well, I mentor because I was mentored. I think Marian Wright Edelman, one of my heroines, said, service is the rent we pay for living. And I feel the same thing. I feel like when someone invests in me, as many people have, what I write about in my book is that I didn't get here on my own. I didn't get here because I was some miracle kid that had dust sprinkled on me and things just happened. There were people in my life who saw potential in me, people who didn't have to make the investment, who held a hand out and showed me the way. And some of them were much older than me. Some of them were people who were my peers or people just ahead of me. So I am a product of the generosity of other people's mentorship. So the expectation of myself is that I give that back. And it's also selfish of me that I mentor, because I get a lot out of it too. I mean, one of the best things I do is spend time with younger people because they keep me focused. As I said at the top of this conversation, you all keep me clear and focused. I feel fulfilled in helping you achieve your goals. It's the most fulfilling thing that I do, is to watch another person benefit from something that I help them do. I'm not here to compete with people. I'm here to continue to lift people up. So I think my hope is that the support that I've shown you and others have shown you, you will find it in you to show that to someone else. And one of the reasons I started the mentorship program in the White House was because I wanted people to know that everyone has the time and the capability, even the First Lady and the President of the United States, because the President had a separate mentorship program too. And we connected our mentees with senior people throughout the White House, from the Chief of Staff to the head of the household to Secret Service agents. They were connected with people on a regular basis. So if we can do it, if we could find the time in our busy lives to take a moment out, because it doesn't even take that long. You know, you can have an impact on another person with one good conversation. You know, I never underestimate the value, I write this in the book, of showing children my regard, which is why I take time out when I see kids. Because I think even if I'm with you in a photo line or on a rope line, that maybe there's one thing I can say to you, that you're beautiful, that you're smart, that I see you. You know, that I believe in you. Yeah, I don't know you, but sometimes a kid just needs to hear that. And that doesn't have to come from the First Lady. It's powerful when it does come from the First Lady, but coming from you, coming from all of you to someone who looks up to you, it means the same thing. So my expectation for all of you is that you find a way to mentor. And maybe now is not the time, but at some point in your life, when you get to a place where you have the space, my hope is that you make that time and that you continue to look for the mentors in your life, because I still look for mentors, even today. Anybody who knows more than me, I'm going to sit them down and they're going to become my friend, and I'm going to ask for help. I did it when I came into the White House. The first people I sat down with were other living First Ladies. I made it a point to meet with every single one of them. Number one, to just thank them for their service. Number two, I wanted to make sure they felt the lines of communication were open with me. Third, I wanted to know what it was like for them. What were their challenges and what were their struggles? And I made sure that my staff stayed connected to Laura Bush's staff so that they could pick up the phone and call and learn. So you never stop learning, and I never stop learning. So if I'm still looking for mentorship, you all should be doing that at every phase of your life. Whether it's another mother, when you become a parent, you're going to need other parents to help you mentor. If you're in a relationship, you're going to want mentorship to help you get through your relationship. It never stops.
That's really powerful, isn't it, that we can all learn from each other. And Winnie, you wanted to ask a question about that, didn't you?
So speaking of mentoring, what is the best piece of advice that you have ever been given?
Oh, I've been given so much good advice. Oh, wow. Finding my passion, and I'll stop there because I just had this conversation earlier this morning. You know, one of the challenges that formal education places before young people is that you're taught to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. right? And you're given titles, right? And there's a finite set of them. A lawyer, teacher, a researcher. You learn those titles. And then you do the work to get to those titles. And then you get jobs and you have careers. What I learned was none of that has anything to do necessarily with who I am, not what I want to be. What do I care about? How do I want to wake up and invest my time every day? What brings me joy? What makes me sad? We don't teach that in school. But I learned to try to find that for me and turn that passion into my career. And that was some of the best advice, because that's when I learned that I didn't want to be a lawyer, because I'd never taken the time to think about why was I going to law school. I was going to law school because I thought I should be a lawyer, not because that's who I was. That's not, it wasn't that work filled me up. So I had to learn how to do that, and that required networking and exposing myself to more people and more jobs and more careers and more opportunities. And as a result of that, I became an assistant to the mayor in the city of Chicago. And then I went on to run a nonprofit organization, and I went on to be an associate dean at a university, and I went on to be the vice president at an academic medical center. And my life just started opening up in ways that I never predicted, because I started asking myself that one simple question, not what did I want to be, but who did I want to be, and how did I want to show up in the world? And if you all can get the jump on starting to ask yourself that question as you, go after your careers, if you're starting to think about what kind of work will bring you joy, because if you find that, you're going to do well at it, and everything else is going to fall into place, and it did for me. So that was some of the best advice I got.
And really important, because we're all going to be working for a very long time, so we need to actually enjoy what we're doing. Now, Latrishka, I know you had something to talk about friendship, didn't you?
Yeah, friendship and role models, female role models, really. So for me, the most inspiring person in my life directly and my role model is my mother, just because I know she came from, quite a tough background, and she worked incredibly hard to get where she was and give me a better life. And I know for you, you've said similar things about the impact that your mother's had in your life. So I just wanted to ask you about the importance of female role models, strong female role models in your life, and also perhaps about your female friends and how that kind of sisterhood has helped and impacted your life, and the importance of that for young girls like myself and everyone here.
Well, you all know something about sisterhood here, right? Just a little bit of something. Yeah, female role models were, they were critical. And I was surrounded by wonderful, strong women in different ways. I mean, the thing you point out is strength shows up in so many different ways. It doesn't just show up in a top education and a high-powered career with a salary. It doesn't have a title necessarily. The strong women in my life were my mother and aunts and my grandmothers. People who got up every day and worked and sacrificed and didn't complain and showed me love and filled me up with so much knowledge just based on the common sense, real life people that they were. My mother is the most important woman in my life, without a doubt. And she has been my aid, my source of strength. She moved her life into the White House, something that this woman would have never wanted to do on her own. This was not her idea of something great, upending her life and being put out on the international stage, but she did it because, once again, she was sacrificing to support me and to support our daughters in a way that, she has done all my life. I've seen, women who get up and work and do the hard work, the unpleasant, unfulfilling work of just making a living, and then come home and sew the clothes and do the laundry and make sure that the holidays are special for their children. Those are that's the kind of role modeling. Those are the voices in my head every day when I think about the kind of woman that I want to be. But before I go on to friendships, I also want to talk about the importance that the men in my life played in making me a strong woman, because I also had a father and a brother who respected me and didn't treat me as a princess. They treated me as an equal from an early age. So when my brother learned to box, I learned to box right along with him. When my brother learned how to throw a ball, I was on the other end catching the ball. I was their equal, and I felt that. And I say this to men, and we don't have many men in this room, is that we don't want to downplay the importance of men holding young girls in high regard, that plays an important role. And I'm not really speaking to you all right now. I'm talking to the men out there who sometimes think, well, strong girls they come from strong women. And the truth is, strong girls come from strong men too. And that played a huge role in me feeling safe and secure, and also having a high bar for the kind of man I would let into my life, because of the example that my father showed, how he treated me, how he treated my mother. I married a Barack Obama who I knew would be the same kind of man to me and to my daughters. So we can't underestimate the important role that a solid male presence has as a role model. But then there are the friendships. Oh, my girlfriends have kept me going through this, especially when when kids came into the scene, because many of my girlfriends were working mothers like me. And you guys cannot relate to the stories and the struggles of all that comes when children show up in your life. It will be the greatest joy, but it will be your biggest challenge, especially if you've got to earn a living and you live in a busy household. So my girlfriends, we relied on one another. That notion, it takes a village to raise a child, is absolutely true. And I want you young girls to know that I don't think that children were meant to be raised in isolation. We need help. We need help from our aunties and our mothers and our girlfriends. But we also have to learn how to ask for that help. And sometimes we're socialized as women to believe that you have to do it all on your own. I've done none of this on my own. I've done this with the help and support and love and emotional encouragement of other women. And on that note, I want you all to start practicing that kind of sisterhood if you're not already, which means that we as women, we don't have the luxury of tearing each other down. We just simply don't have the luxury. There are enough barriers out there. There are enough people out there ready to tear us down. So our job as women, as much as we can, because no one is perfect, is to do our best to lift each other up. And to do that, you have to start practicing now in your friendships and the way you treat other people. There's no room for mean girls and cliques and social complications that naturally come at your age. I want you all to be mindful of that as you grow and start practicing that now with one another. Find somebody who's struggling and help them. Don't hold them down. Don't put your foot on their neck. If you see another girl alone or isolated, you never know what they're going through. Keep that part of your heart open to each other, because you're going to need it, and I still need it. So that's one thing that we can do better as women, is that we can take better care of each other. And I hope you all are practicing, and if you are already practicing, you continue to do that.
I think you are someone who you've really practiced what you preach. You think education is the most valuable thing to young women, and here you are in a school, and as you were 9 years ago, inspiring us. So, yeah, it's just...
I absolutely believe that education is the key, not just for young women, but for people in general. Knowledge, the opportunity to mature, to try new things, to meet new people, to be open to different cultures. You know, a lot of the problems that we have in the world come from a lack of knowledge. You know, people who are just underexposed to all the different ways there are to be human. And we judge people based on our limited understanding of the world. And I always try to hold out empathy for those who are in that position, because I know that it's based in a place of ignorance. Sounds like a harsh word, but it's the appropriate word, just not knowing. You only know what you know. And sadly, if your worldview is this small, and you know no one else that looks or think differently from you because you didn't have the chance to be educated or to travel or to see the world or to have your ideas challenged and to learn how to be analytical, you know, then it's understandable that you would be afraid of something different from you, you know? But the only way we break through that is to educate ourselves and to educate the next generation, you know, to open them up to new ideas. I mean, you have to learn how to be a critical thinker. It doesn't just happen. So someone can't analyze what Brexit means if they don't know how to think critically about the issues. You know, if you're not a strong reader, if you can't take in huge amounts of information and break it down and have it make sense, you won't even know when things are good for you or bad for you. So yes, I absolutely believe, and particularly for women and girls, because women still raise the next generation. You know, that's just sort of the sad part of this. Women are at the heart of all society. We bring life, we raise life, we nurture life, we feed our families. And if we don't know what to do, if those mothers raising children don't know how to keep them alive or not expose them to diseases or to feed them when they're hungry, if they can't raise a living to bring resources in, we all struggle. So it would seem to me that if we want to solve anything, any major issue that you can think about, climate change, terrorism, poverty, inequality, it starts with an education. You know, I don't know how we do any of it if people don't know what they don't know.
Something that struck us was the power relations between you and President Obama when you were in office, and even now the work you do post White House. How do you think this works in your relationship? How do you ensure that partnership of equals? Because that is obviously something that we can learn from, and corporations and so many other people in so many different sectors can learn from as well.
That's a great question. We're still working on it. But what I've come to learn is that in a partnership, there is rarely a time when everything is completely equal, where you do 50% and I do 50%. Life doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way in your friendships. It doesn't work that way at home. You know, sometimes some people pick up more slack than the other. So it's the equity isn't measured on a moment-by-moment basis. It's sort of a long-term view of equity. So what I found in my relationship with my husband, that there were times that I was doing more of the parenting, more of the homemaking, more of the scheduling and the sort of grunt work of family, and he was doing more career stuff, him stuff, running for stuff, holding office stuff. But now that our kids are older, that's starting to shift in different ways. So one of the things I've been telling to women in particular, what I have found is that it is difficult to have it all at the same time. That there's oftentimes a balance that goes into life. And some women feel like sometimes we as women hurt ourselves. We put too much pressure on ourselves to think that we should have it all. I found that there are times when I took a different career because it was better for my family and it wasn't my passion. But at least I was making a conscious decision about that because I wanted to invest more time in my girls, or I needed a better benefits package. You know, life, there's a lot of practicality that comes into shaping a life and a relationship with somebody. And there's a lot of compromise and a lot of give and take. But in order to be a true partner in any relationship, I've learned that you have to be whole first. It doesn't work, if this makes sense to you, to go into a partnership thinking, I'm broken and my partner will make me whole. So it's sort of like love doesn't fix the problems that you have inside, that you are a better partner if you work on yourself, if you know who you are, if you know how to earn your own living and to take care of yourself so that if something goes wrong, you can be an equal. If you don't know your likes and dislikes, if you haven't tried new things, if you haven't overcome some of your fears, the relationship doesn't fix all the stuff that are the holes that individuals have, which is why I think education is so important. Because being out there and going to college and learning about yourself and trying new things, all of that makes you a better partner in whatever relationship you choose to be in, because you will have explored yourself in ways that will help you add value. But conversely, you have to pick a partner who is whole. You know, you can't fix necessarily a broken person just because you love them. They have to do that work. So some of the equality comes in, we picked each other for a lot of the same reasons. And I picked somebody, as I said earlier, who would be willing to work on himself and work on us and not just think, that's your work to do. So choose wisely, I would say. Choose wisely. So whenever I doubted myself, I just told myself, let me put my head down and do the work, and I would let my work speak for itself. So whenever I doubted myself, I just told myself, let me put my head down and do the work, and I would let my work speak for itself. When you're young, the best thing you can do is, number one, take care of you, because you are the best asset you can invest in at this time. So that means when you're young, the best thing you can do is, number one, take care of you, because you are the best asset you can invest in at this time. So that means, and my life just started opening up in ways that I never predicted, because I started asking myself that one simple question, not what did I want to be, but who did I want to be? And my life just started opening up in ways that I never predicted, because I started asking myself that one simple question, Not what did I want to be, but who did I want to be? You have to learn how to be a critical thinker. A lot of the problems that we have in the world come from a lack of knowledge. You know, you have to learn how to be a critical thinker. A lot of the problems that we have in the world come from a lack of knowledge. You know,